Sink or swim, give up or press in. That's something, a choice that we each get to make many times, most every day. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our new series on stepping into our more in 24 right here on our coffee page. Coffee, you know what it stands for: Conversations of Friends of Faith to encourage and equip. I'm so delighted to have you along, and I want you to know something exciting that has happened recently just because I've been listening to you. Many of you have talked about how much you enjoy this study and you're following along in your book. And you're saying things like what I'm finding out, and that is this: that as you're filling out your pages, you're saying to me, Kim, I don't have enough room. I heard you. I worked on it yesterday, and my friend and we have created a notebook, a journal of sorts that will accompany this. And so, my friends, before long, you'll be able to have a notebook, a journal book that looks just like this that will accompany that for even more notes. So, I'm so delighted to be able to hear what you have to say and what you need, and be able to, sometimes I can make things happen like that. And this is something that is very important to make happen, because I am hearing so many of you are saying how much you love getting back into the Word like this. So great. I know I'm enjoying it. So it's really exciting to be able to do that together. And that's really what our ministry is all about. It's all about being in the Word, allowing the Word to get into us, and for us as friends to be able to talk about it so that it can equip us and encourage us and empower us right where we are. We know that the Scripture is alive, it's active, and it will always meet our need where we are. Now, it may not always give us the full answer, but it will give us the next step. God promises that He will direct our steps. So, what better way than to find out those steps than to be together in His Word? So, good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to welcome in all of our Facebook friends, and then even our YouTube. We have our YouTube friends. So, welcome. We're so delighted to have you. Okay, well, as we jump into Job today, have you had time to read any of your Job comments or chapters? We were reading from the book of Job this morning, chapter 6 through 9 is where we're going to really talk this today. And, it's really, what's the word I want to say? When I'm reading through the chapters, I'm reading it for myself, and I'm also reading it on behalf of you, my friends. And I'm trying to go through it in a way that speaks to me, in a way that I can present something in it that I hope will encourage you. But with that being said, I don't want to limit you in what God is wanting to say to you. So when I present something, I am presenting it in the best light that I think will speak to us this day. But there are so many different topics in what I'm saying, or in what we're reading, that I don't want you to miss that. So in this guided tour, so to speak, as reaching our more in 24, as we're reading through the Word together, I hope that you will listen and participate in what we're doing as a group. But I also hope that you will do as we're talking about with our more, that as you're reading it, you'll ask God to open your mind to what He wants to say to you that particular day, and to receive it. Remember, our more is an acronym. And then at the end of the study, the E, the engage. How does God want you to engage this word into your life so that you experience a nugget of that more each day? And that's how we're going to travel together. We may not be hearing the same things, because where you are and where I am are definitely different places. But I do hope that each day I present something that's encouraging, that you can put in your spiritual bank for yourself, for now, for later, or even to be able to share with someone else. And so today, or last night and this morning early, as I was reading through this, and yes, we've all probably read through all of these scriptures. I loved what Stephanie said the other day from Texas. She said, how could I have read all this and I'm getting so much new? Because God was giving her things when she was reading it the first time. And now, hopefully, with all of us, He's giving us something new this time, because we're in different places. Our maturity level is different. We can actually handle more of the depth of God's word. You see, remember when a child asks a question, we answer it according to what we know they can handle. Same principle applies with God and us as His children. He will not overwhelm us or overload us. He will give us the answers based on what He knows we can handle and what we need at that time. So today, as we go into the book of Job, we'll just step back to remember what we thought about yesterday. One of the big nuggets from yesterday, which was so powerful, is that Job, what we began to learn about God as we're reading about Job. Now, we know that Job was a man of many sorrows. We know that he was one day very lucrative in all that he owned. He was wealthy. He had, he's the man of the day. And within a few days, everything was gone. And we saw how all that happened. So we know about the man of sorrows, and we're going to get to the end of his story. But what we learned about God yesterday, what we learned about how He is all powerful, that even though He created, that He did create all things. We saw that in Genesis as we began. But when He created it, He didn't walk away from it. He still holds all authority and all power over everything. And we saw that yesterday in the life of Job, when we saw that we were reminded of the one who roams the earth, seeking whom he may devour, the one who acts like a lion that we're told about in 1 Peter 5:8. And I'm sure that we all have had experience dealing with him. But here's the thing that we learned, is that the enemy, the lion, the one who seeks to be like a lion, is on a leash. He is very limited by that leash. He's limited according to what God foresees and what God says. And so there's freedom in that. We talked about that yesterday, right? There's so much freedom in that. But that doesn't mean that there's not fear and trepidation in it as well. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to be rejoicing because there's freedom, that we're going to be. Job sobbed, tore off his clothes. We remember the agony and the pain. I'm sure that you felt that agony and pain at some point in your life. And here's the thing that I want us to remember today, that I think is so good of what we see in this lesson, that's so pertinent to who we are today. Because see, what happened with Job is that it got to the point to where he was so depressed, so not ever blaming God, but he just got to the point to where he had had enough. Have you ever felt like that? I mean, he just like, I've had enough. I want out. I want to quit. And that's very much like us today. Do you know statistically only 8, not 80, 8% of those who have set goals for the year will finish out those goals? That means 92% will give up. 92% will walk away. And so, but why? Because they get tired, because it gets too hard, because they get bored, whatever, they'll walk away. And so it's very understandable if you're battling that already. Or maybe it's not even a New Year's goal or resolution or intention or whatever word you want to use. Maybe it's just getting through life. right now. Maybe it's something that started back last year. Maybe it's something that started yesterday and it's like, I'm tired of this. I'm out. It's just too big. It's too much. Well, that's what Job did. He goes right along with the American statistics, our Western world statistics, because we see in Job of chapter 6, verse 8 and 9, he says, oh, that I may have my request, that God would grant what I hope for, that God would be willing to crush me, to let loose his hands and just cut off my life. Not only did he want to give up on what was going on, he wanted to give up on life. Listen, friends, I know the statistics of people wanting to give up on life, and it's real and it's valid, and it is a battle that many of us face so many times. But what can we do rather than giving up? How can we press on? What is the message in this today? Well, we see in his life that it is, and I don't want to get to the end of his story, and I know you have the end of the story, but that you get to the point of those pivotal moments where you have to decide on your own. You have to come to that moment and you have to look back at what we've learned at Genesis. You have to look at what Job is saying. You have to look at your life and you have to say, what am I going to do? What is my decision? Do y'all remember the story of Florence Chadwick? I always think of her when I think about giving up, because she was a swimmer back in the 1950s. And Florence Chadwick loved to swim in the ocean more than she did the pools. And she was an ambitious woman. And the story goes that she had some great victories in her swimming. She swam the English Channel. She did these incredible things. But she decided she wanted to swim between the Catalina Islands and the California coastline. And that was like, I think, around 26 miles. Is that what I had written down here? 26 miles. So she set everything up. That was her goal. That's what she wanted to do. And what she did was she had her, she was ready. She had her people that were following her to watch out for sharks and all this. And she's going and she's pumped up and she's ready. She's had victories in her past. She's good to go. And she gets out there and she swims for hours. I can't even remember, 15 hours. She swam for 15 hours. And as she was swimming, of course, she was beginning to become tired. But then something else happened. This fog came in. And when the fog came in, she couldn't see the coastline. And when she couldn't see the coastline and she was already exhausted, what happened? She began to doubt. Well, what happened to Eve? She began to doubt. See, that's what the enemy, it's just always what he wants to do. He wants to cause us to doubt. And she began to doubt. She couldn't see. Even the people around her were saying, well, maybe you should come on in. And she did. She quit. Well, she swam a little bit longer, about an hour. But then it was too much. She quit. She called out, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. And so they pulled her back up on the boat. And as they continued on, the fog began to rise. And she realized, she was 1 mile from completing it. 1 mile, only 1 mile after all those hours. She had given up that soon. And that is what I hope that will encourage you today. We don't know how close we are to that next little victory, to that next little win, that next breakthrough. The fog may have settled in on you, and maybe you're just like Job. You're like the statistics. You're like Florence Chadwick, and you're just like, I need to reach for that drink. I need to turn on that I said I would never watch. I just need to give up. It's too much. Before you do, will you just stop and think? Where the Bible tells us in Philippians 3:14, he says, do not give up. It's one thing I do. I press on toward the prize. That is one thing. What is one thing you can do today? What is one thing that you can do that can help you to not give up? but yet to press on. You know, the great thing about Florence Chadwick is she didn't quit. And maybe you're saying, well, I've already quit, Kim. I quit a long time ago. I gave up. I got in the boat. It was too rocky out there, just like what Florence Chadwick did. Maybe you got so depressed that you just said, God, just take my life like Job did. But here's the thing. You know what Florence did? 2 months later, she jumped back on that boat and she went back out to do it again. And when she got out there, the same thing happened. She swam 15, 16 hours. The fog began to come in again, just like before. But in her mind, she saw the coastline. She didn't have to see it to remember it was there. She saw it. And so she wasn't starting from scratch. She was starting from experience. And so in our defeats, maybe from the past, we remember those to build us up, to keep us going now. Oh, there's so many tremendous lessons in what I'm saying to you today, but I want you to get the one that most matters to you. She went back. She gave up, but she went back. And she did, and she finished what she had set out to do. We will learn that Job wanted to give up. He wanted to throw up his hands, but he didn't. And we'll see what happens with him. You and I are sitting here today, and we've already started. We've already said we're going to live out our more in 24, whatever that means. And it may be foggy, and it's going to get tiresome, and it's going to get heavy, and we're going to want to give up. What is one thing that you can do to not give up? Oh, we've already had so many lessons. Remember, the enemy is on a leash. Remember, God's created all things. Remember, God is all powerful. Trust in who he is. And even when it's foggy, let's keep on. Well, friends, I hope that this encouraged you today, because I will tell you what, I feel like I needed it. I feel like I needed it, because that fog can dampen your faith. But when we have God's promises in our mind and we can rely on what we know about God, then we can battle through any fog, even when we can't see. So wherever you are today, or hold on to this, you may need this back, in June or August or September. But it's just a great word from the Old Testament of Job, that we can either sink or swim. We can give up or press on. Let's each of us realize that we have been empowered to make the decisions for ourselves. Let's choose to ask God for his power to help us to press in. Well, thank you all so much. I just love having you on. Listen, if any of you would like to come on with me one morning to introduce the segments, or to come on and just talk with me for a minute, let me know. Send me a message. I would love to have you join me one morning. All right, now listen, we're getting ready to go for the weekend. So I want you to, Saturday and Sunday, if you can, if you have time, stay true to your study. On day 6, on Saturday, you'll be reading Job 10 through 13. On Sunday, you'll be reading Job 14 and 16. And then we'll be back together on Monday, where we'll be discussing a little bit of the weekend, but most importantly, Job 17 through 20. So, all right, what do y'all think? Are you loving it? Are you loving getting in the Word? Are you being inspired? Is the Word reaching you right where you are? Is it making you think deeper? Is it maturing us into having that audacious obedience? I hope so, because God is so worth it. He is so worth it. All right, friends, love you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Bye, everybody.